Hello, good morning, Shri. How was you?
I'm doing good. How was your weekend?
Weekend was good. Interestingly, I went and attended a WhatsApp group, the group which existed on WhatsApp in a in-person setting. It was in one of the offices, and it's called the Filter Coffee Meetup.
Filter coffee kit.
Yeah.
Okay. Not the one like
And
this. Okay.
not this is Black Coffee Meetup. So this is Filter Coffee Meetup, and really inspiring to see so many startup founders coming, sharing their stories. And this group, mind you, has been active for the last 10 years or so.
Okay.
So the who's of who of Chennai entrepreneurs have already been a part of this group. So that was really great to
Interesting,
see.
So,
And
so what caught your mind? I mean, you're still talking about it generally, So how was the conversation? What kind of people did you meet? Did you find any interesting scenario?
yeah, we'll talk more about that. But welcome to Outbound by High Performer. This is Ramesh and Sri bringing you to the next episode.
Yes.
We'll talk about a lot of things. We'll talk about startups. We'll talk about high performer. We'll talk about the way that's going around the ecosystem. So
Yes, we'll talk
all
about
the great
AI,
things.
how things are changing with AI and all of that. But Ramesh, I just wanted to continue on the startup event you met, right? What did you see? There's a lot of every weekend. In fact, I also was busy making some launches on the product side, right, over the weekend. Now you had met some founders.
Really
right?
a fantastic ecosystem of founders that we have, right? Although the world talks about it as we're not as deep tech and all of that, it's always being super local startups and all of that. But interestingly, I met a startup founder who's been there in existence for the past 7 years, even pre-COVID.
Okay.
And it's deep tech to the core, which means this startup actually gets its images from NASA and other multiple. They even have their own drone tech just to get high-res images and supply it to infrastructure developers. Like if you want to put up a wind park, what's the right area? What's the wind energy? How much of elevation do you need? And you can capture this only at high level, right? It's deep tech. So, but what I really liked about the founder is how well he confided into the group of talking about his vulnerabilities, why he isn't able to grow as much as he wants to grow. And nothing wrong, right? He's ambitious. Otherwise, you can't last 7 years. He spoke about his COVID days. He spoke about how this group, the Filter Coffee Meetup, actually helped him come up. So pretty interesting.
But if you just pause there for a second, Ramesh, you're talking about a deep tech company startup, right?
Yep.
It's been there for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
And you know what happened last week, at least in the Indian startup circuit. There was a lot of news specifically from Piyush, right? Where he spoke about how Indian startups should probably be thinking long term, deep tech. So, like, why is it so? What's happening? I think here is a person.
Yeah.
Why don't we spend a couple of minutes to just take a step back and understand, right? Hey, what's happening? Why? I mean, is our startup ecosystem even very helpful for the founders to make business, to make a long term bet?
Yeah.
Right. What do you think? Because you just met somebody, just came in together.
I mean, that's a nice getting this thing together, right?
Right.
On one hand, let's talk about it. 15 years back,
Okay.
no one spoke about startups, right? The government didn't even have an initiative to put up startups on there, right? The second, the ecosystem that I'm talking about, right? There was always about unemployment and youth and all of that, right? That was a central problem.
There were even more important problems.
Even more important
So
problems.
that's the way I look at it.
And then the minister this time, Shri Piyush Goyal ji, said that, hey, why are we only building delivery apps? Right, hyper local.
Yes.
First, let's agree that, hey, this has made a lot of lives easier, at least for people who want to have food at home and all that.
Correct.
Second, it's given solid employment. Like how many people have come out from not being even a graduate to now earning 20 to 30,000 rupees per month.
Correct.
Right? So that solved one piece of problem. I think the minister is now very aptly, from a timing standpoint, thinking about how US is probably launching deep tech companies. China is looking at deep tech inside, but India is not.
Correct.
And I think it's a very healthy problem that he's talking about, because I think India is now on the cusp where it is in the superpowerish kind of a country but we've got to be
It's a long way to
technologically
go.
advanced as well.
It's a long way to go. I think
Absolutely.
he's probably resetting the pole.
Yeah, he is. He is resetting
that's the way I would look at it.
Yeah.
But what it means to a lot of the people, right? See, there are a lot of people involved in that. Building a startup ecosystem is not just founders coming up with a deep tech problem and solving it. Right?
Correct.
So I want to understand, Ramesh, in your mind, if let's say today suddenly, you want to make high performer AI, a deep tech company which is basically building models and things like that, what should change?
Let's look at this company I spoke about.
Yeah.
I met at the group, right? It's not easy. They are actually procuring satellite images either through their own drone tech or through NASA or any other external. But that's not the end of it. They're actually helping infrastructural projects.
Okay.
But are they getting recognized? Perhaps not. Do they have a long-term view? It is hard because they're working with one client at a time for the next 6 months. And the only reason is availability of capital.
Correct.
That's a very
important thing.
Important piece.
Very important.
The puzzle.
Right?
So this is a bootstrap. And I asked him, hey, why haven't you raised funds? He's not close to it. He's definitely open to it. But he thinks, and aptly so, that his business can't grow this and scale 40% or 100% from year 2 onwards. It is going to take time.
Okay. So very interesting, Ramesh, right? So what it means is that I think if you have to reset the pole and if we all have to optimize for long term rather than building companies which will hit $1 million from 12 months from the time we launch the product or build a $10 million in about 3 years from the time we launch the product, what we need to also have to reset is that have to have runway, so which means that you need to also look at opportunities for funding, which are also looking at the deep tech.
Correct.
Which means it can't come from conventional, the VC funds because it's a business to be executed.
Correct.
Right? So which means that then we need to have larger funds. A lot of times the US and the Chinese, they have funds which are very, very long-term fund, right? So that is where the thing should change. Number 2, right? Even though today we talk about SaaS and the transition from SaaS into AI, there is also this whole mindset from a lot of people, which includes both founders and on the other side, right? Where they think it's a quick money-making scheme, right? Where you launch an AI company and suddenly within 12 months you make like 3 million and then from 3 you go to 10 million. So these are the mindsets which has to change.
Absolutely.
And if you're doing deep tech,
you're bringing 2 important points over here, right? One is availability of long-term funds.
Correct.
Right. And when I say long-term, these are really long-term.
Long-term, 10, 12, 15 years, right?
And the expectations of growth that comes within it.
Correct.
Nothing against the VC world. That's
Absolutely,
how it runs.
absolutely.
But
that's how it works, right?
If you think about it, right? Every VC is looking to invest in a company that can return its fund, entire fund, the life size of the fund itself. And the life size typically is about 10 years. So how do you think, availability of capital with such a short fund timing, right? It will take time. You bet on the founders in the first check.
Correct.
You look at minimal growth. You look at ambitions and this in the second phase.
Correct.
And then you look at growth that comes, and then things begin to see out.
Correct.
But when the fund or anyone investing is like growth from day 1 or day 0.
No, Ramesh, the way we should look at it is this way, right? You should look at how we evolve, right? This is typically evolution happens, right? 25 years back when you said, we started moving from non-IT to helping with IT services.
Correct.
From IT services, now we started building SaaS companies. From
product
SaaS,
companies.
Product companies, right? SaaS product companies. From product companies, now we are trying to become the AI product companies. Now is the time where we look at deep tech as an opportunity, right? If you look at deep tech and opportunities, the incentives have to be aligned differently. With the current setup of founders and the VCs and everybody around, incentives are different, right?
Absolutely.
So unless otherwise the incentives are changing, in fact, I would look at it as a very interesting, I would say, a goal I think set by if that's an initiative from the government, then they're basically asking us to look at differently, right? They're asking us to look at, hey, do you have any other incentive? Or you can look at an opportunity which can create a different incentive, which is 10, 20 years, right?
Absolutely.
That's the way it should work, right? Because with the current setup where we are, right? I don't think I can go down the lane and then do deep tech and build a model for all social interactions and maybe come back after 3 years and start selling. That's not the way it works, right? You see what I'm saying, Ramesh? That's not the way we are set up right now.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Now we are set up in a way where you have to go to the market faster. ship faster, get feedback, get to a momentum where you start generating a repeatable revenue or business model. And that's how the incentive is aligned in the Indian ecosystem right now.
Country also, like when you say deep tech, it is deep tech engineering, right? Computer science and all of that. So let's take a step back and look at availability of talent available in this space.
Correct.
You have just the IITs, which are at the pinnacle, and they are just churning about a few hundreds of engineers.
Correct.
Right? I think the government should also incentivize institutions to set up top-class engineering colleges.
Correct.
Who will remain in India to build this deep tech.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
If you take China, America, you see Berkeley, you have Carnegie Mellon, and China, of course, is like this. All of them are building this because they have engineers who stay there, who study there and stay in the country and build, right?
It's a catch-22, Ramesh. You go ask people from, I'm sure we have growing kids. Meaning, you have to get, again, incentives have to be aligned from the college.
That's the point of incentives.
But if you look at one more interesting aspect which we are missing, even as we have a conversation, right? If you look at in the US, right? Successful companies who've been there in the business for 50 years, like you look at the Microsoft of the world, Amazon of the world.
Yeah, 50 years of Microsoft.
Correct. But they invest back long term because they have capital. Apple, they have capital. So they are investing it back in research. So we need to have those large Indian companies like the Reliance and the Tata of the world have to drive the initiative along with the government to create this long-term setup, right? And that's already happening in US or already happened in US.
Actually,
so same thing should happen in India.
In India as well,
so
right?
Which means that these companies which have been successful in a particular space, right, could be large companies, right, 50 years, 100 years, and they would have capital, right, and which they could invest on long term. That's how you will create an opportunity like this.
You absolutely can. I was speaking to another friend who's in Dubai for a long time. The biggest of American colleges are putting up institutions in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and the rest of the Emirates.
Yeah.
The sole reason being, can we have students study in Dubai in top-notch universities? They're affiliated to New York University and stuff like that.
Excellent. Yes.
Be there and work there. So you see, it's an ecosystem building thing. I mean, founders just cannot be deep tech right from the way they emerge. You have to keep thinking that always. And America and China, to be honest, they are already ahead.
These things we can easily catch up. I think, one great thing, from the conversation which is happening last week is that at least we are trying to reset the pole. So if we need to get into deep tech, I think some other alignments, initiatives have to be, incentive have to be changing. And it's again another 10 years of journey. But this time, do we have a 10-year time? Because the way AI is changing.
That's a very
so
literally only time can tell.
This time, I mean, maybe that's where, we are not, we're not set up for the right thing right now because we are behind already 10 years, 15 years. And now this is changing like at rocket speed. Now, how do you catch up?
That's a very...
that's the interesting part.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to it. So it's, I would think it's the responsibility of course, the government bringing in these centralized funds, having a long road, incentivizing the ecosystem right from the education.
Correct.
Right. If you have to still think about my 13-year-old daughter that she has to get her exams and 70% is the mark that she has to pass in languages. And it's hard. The focus is on it's on education and getting the mark sheet versus learning versus creating a habit of learning, practical knowledge, right? I don't think we even have, I think the new education policy is trying to change all of this, but I think it will take the next 10 years for us to probably be a superpower.
I don't know. I would even question whether, leave behind the being superpower. I'll tell you. Even for you to reset some of the, already we are used to some of this system, this is going to take a decade. But this time, with the things changing so fast, there's a good chance that some kind of a robot can come and replace some of the people as well.
Oh, absolutely.
With AGI and everything coming in the picture. So we need to move fast. I mean, that's the big...
And the good part, by the way, Sri, in that filter copy meetup, everyone is very open to using AI. There's no one who says, no, AI is not there. So these are entrepreneurs who've been there 7 years, 8 years into it, and they want to learn what can be done in the next stage of AI. How can they process accounts payable? I met another founder who's in the accounts payable space, and they want to know how fast they can go. But the problem again remains that they can work only with one customer at a time to create that model, and that's not going to scale to.
Correct. That's what I'm right. The incentives have to be differently aligned, right? Hopefully that change can happen quicker. I mean, if you ask me, that's what I would say. all of them is great, but if the incentives remain the same for everybody,
It's not
for
gonna
all the
change.
stakeholders, who are involved in building this whole startup ecosystem, I don't think you
It's
can't
gonna
expect
change.
a different outcome, right? We will still remain on the peripheral of deep tech.
Yeah.
We will not be a kind of a country which will be manufacturing new chipset for AI. All of it has to happen. We need to have different incentives.
Absolutely. So, do
And
you
hope-
think? Can I ask you a question and be very open to it, Sri? In your perspective, is India actually moving towards adoption of AI in terms of new entrepreneurs, new businesses, or do you still see it as a wrapper on AI?
No, I think Ramesh, very interesting, right? See, we are definitely adopting AI. I mean, I don't think if you go look at the OpenAI, the number of users in India would be on the top 3 for sure. So in terms of adoption of AI, definitely we have, because we have the population in our favor, all of that. But are we going to be the pioneer in building the next deep tech? I think we are just kind of behind, but we could catch up very easily because we should learn from what people have built across globally, right? So if, like I said again, right, I've been repeating like again, if the incentives are realigned, as a country to build
What
an
would you
ecosystem,
do if you were Piyush Goyal ji? And
I
what
would
would you
I would basically call the top 3 industries in India, pick the Reliance, Tata, and I would create a fund which is probably $10 billion, and put money from the government and bring these guys and create a fund which basically would optimize for deep tech in from the solar to chipset to AI. I would give it a 20 years plan and I would run it. That's what
You're talking like China, because that's what they did for Olympics when they said,
That's
"Hey,
what-
I want to win an Olympic medal." So they started 20 years before
That's what we
and
should do.
created these schools that everyone, if you're not into academics, get into athletics, and then they created these athletes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And then they have been looking at it, and China today is
So that's the only way. So maybe we should learn from them, but apply differently. But we have huge successful companies. I mean, there are huge companies in India.
Absolutely.
Super successful, great companies, great institutions. There's a group. There's an amazing government which is also trying to drive things. This is probably
doubt.
one of these times where in the last 10 years you're seeing so much of support for startups from the
Yeah.
government, right?
Yeah.
So which means there is an ecosystem right now, but incentives have to be realigned.
Absolutely.
And for that, you have to create a runway, without having short-term thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
So thanks. I think that was an interesting discussion. I know this time we went a little out of
Yes.
out of a little bit and talking more about it, because this has been Sri and I have been discussing
Yes,
this quite often
yes.
to say ever since what the minister spoke about. And I think it's time that
Correct.
entrepreneurs, everyone adopts deep tech, adopts AI,
Correct.
just not always in building, but just in your general lives.
Correct.
And see how, and that has really started well. So we got to wait and see how this unfolds.
Yes, looking forward, and please do kind of drop your comments on any new topic you want us to catch up on, discuss.
We'll try and see if
We will try to get there
get
as well. But
with that,
Thank
this
you.
is yet another episode of Outbound with High Performer. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.
thank you.
Cheers.